All right. So there
Yeah.
we go.
Yeah. So it's like all the YouTube guitarists, and I love the fact that people love guitar. I have to preface it with that. And I think everybody that wants to play guitar doesn't want to be the greatest guitar player in the world. They just want to play and have fun. And it's a beautiful thing. But when I was the same way when I was a kid, when you're young and you're learning to play, you have this delusional version of how the music industry works and how everything works. And you go, wow, if I can play this just like Eric Johnson, then I should be able to roll right into town and be the best guitar player in the world. And it's like, no, it doesn't work that way. It's not even close to that way. And you won't know that until you play for a while and you actually become a professional guitarist. It's like you can sit and play football and be able to catch a football and put it on YouTube. Wow, I can catch it between my legs on one hand, blah, blah, blah. And you got your friend or your girlfriend lobbing you the ball and you're catching it all kinds of ways and it looks fantastic. That is not a football player.
Yeah. Right.
Now, right, when you get on the field and Tom Brady throws you the pass and it's burning fast and it's coming out of nowhere, no, now you can't catch it. And that there's two guys twice your size about to hurt you, no, you can't catch it. And you forgot to run the route, no, you can't catch it. You're off the team. It's like, that's the way with guitar. There's things that go on that you have to deal with that are just part of it. For every instrument, drums, whatever, it's just part of it. And you don't understand that. You don't understand that it's more valuable for you to know how to play 40 cover tunes, classic rock in different styles. It would behoove you to play more of that than to learn a Mike Stern solo, because the Mike Stern solo is not going to pay your rent.
Right.
and it's just that simple. And a lot of times you don't understand. Yeah, you don't understand because you have to be like a musical director. Once I got to be a musical director, I learned so much because suddenly there was like another guitar player that I'd hired. And suddenly, reality hit me. And when I got to be my first musical director job, I'm like, oh, I'm going to get the greatest players ever. And the first thing I found out is some of the greatest players are pains in the ass. And I have a million things to do, so I don't have time to deal with their attitudes.
Yep.
And you start to get to a point where, you know what? If I have a gig and there really aren't any solos in the gig, and there's just rhythm guitar stuff, and the guy I hire isn't a great soloist, but he plays the rhythm guitar stuff fine. He shows up on time. He's a nice guy, and he doesn't ask too many questions and bug me. He gets the gig.
Mm-hmm.
He gets the gig. Not because he's the greatest, but because he leaves me alone.
Amen.
He leaves me alone.
Yeah.
It's like, I remember hiring a guy once, and it was like a C major 9 chord. And he kept going, could I play the C major 9 here? Or would you rather have me play it here? Or would you play it there? And I'm like, dude, I just want you to play a C major 9.
And on that note, I have one of my questions here for you. How many C major 7 chords do you need?
I probably know a bunch, and I've probably used 3.
Okay. See, my whole game today is to try to trigger some of the old rants I remember from coming out.
Oh, okay. It's like I know a bunch of different ways, but from sessions and anything I've played, people I've played with, I probably use 3 predominantly.
Yeah. The one you used to go on about was this one.
Exactly.
Yeah, you're like, this is the only C major 7 chord you ever need. And
right.
I just heard this C major 7 sharp 11 chord the other day. I'm going to play that. Bad decision.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's exactly it. Because one thing you have to do is, are you playing guitar because you want to know everything? Or are you playing guitar because you love music, you love guitar, and you want to do a good job when you're playing? And it's almost like the Marines or any armed forces. They just get the job done.
Right.
So you just need to get the job done. So nobody needs to know that you only know one major 7th chord. Long as you play the major 7th chord, you're good. There might be better major 7ths, but it's not going to make or break you. Right. And because that's the one that you need. That's the one that you're going to go to. Like I said, depending on the style of music, I'll go through maybe even 2. Let me grab my guitar. I think maybe even 2. I probably just that one, or that one, and maybe this one, and only because of proximity.
Right.
Or something like that, unless it's a special voice chord, of course.
Sure.
But, that's something different. That's something totally different. But, yeah, it's like guys come in and they want to show, hey, I'm going to play this chord. I'm going to play a sharp 9. I'm going to play a 6-9. Dude, play the chord that's supposed to be there.
Yep.
Please.
Yep.
Please. It's like I have that new thing of I just go, is that your final decision?
Yeah, exactly.
Is that your final decision?
Yeah.
Before I fire you, is that your final decision? Think about it. Choose your decision wisely.
Yeah.
It's like I asked you to play a C major 7th. You know what a C major 7th is, but you decide you want to play this. Now, think about that.
See, that brings me to my next question, which is there such a thing as a bad guitar player?
No, I think there's just bad decisions.
Yes.
That's it. It's like most guitar players play pretty decent, especially now. Younger guys play guitar technically better than we do, just like we play guitar technically better than, the people before us.
Right.
Because it's just there's more chances to learn more, YouTube and everything, so you can learn more. Tunes evolve, stuff like that. So I think most guitar players that play are pretty cool. They may be limited, but that's the other thing to remember. The other rant is there's a couple of things you need to remember about guitar. And there's the guitar world, and there's the real world. The guitar world and the real world. The guitar world, everybody, wants to be Bonamassa or Eric Gales, who I think are wonderful players. And the whole deal, I think it's great. But those are very lucky guys. Those are very lucky guys. Steve Vai, people like that, where their playing got to a pinnacle where they could actually work and be a famous guitar player. But the odds are not with you to do that. It's like starting a prog rock band.
Yeah, man.
I'm 66 years old. I'll be 67. I'm a Gentle Giant guy. I love Gentle Giant. But I loved Yes, I loved prog rock. But when I sit back and think in my lifetime right now of prog rock bands that did anything, Gentle Giant really wasn't one of them. It was probably Yes, Genesis maybe, Rush, Kansas, if you want to think of them as complete prog rock, and Dream Theater, not so much, because they're not as tune oriented, of course. It's more of a musical composition than a pop tune type of deal. But think of that. In the time I've been alive, 4 bands for prog rock bands.
Yeah. So
No,
I guess
it's like
this is something I think about a lot is that changing? Because the whole world now is online, and it seems like these TikTok people and Instagram people like are really somehow making a career out of all the flashy stuff. Because the wisdom that you and I have
well,
bonded over has to do with being a working musician. And like I wonder, like what do I tell a young musician at this point? Like, because maybe that is the real world now.
I think it's what you want. I think it's a good thing, because if that's the way you want to go,
Mm-hmm.
but it kind of turns music into, it's creative, but almost a competition.
Mm-hmm.
And, things are always competitive. That's just the way humans are and we are. But still, it comes a point in your life, and it just kind of happens the way, like in an age type of deal. Like, say when you're 16, you want to be a rock star, blah, blah, blah. And now when you're 30, you just want to work.
Right.
You're like, so your priorities start to change. So at one point you're like, God, this is great. I live with my parents. I play guitar all day. This is great. Well, this isn't going to last forever. So I think it's really cool that YouTube, they're able to get followers and make money and do it. And it's fun. But there's the other world of the working musician.
Yeah, man.
And the working musician, I can't depend on getting followers, because there's two things. One thing, you've got to play everything you know and work really hard, because you've got to constantly try to come up with things that people want to get, other guitar players want to learn.
Mm-hmm.
But then you've got the other world where the C major seventh guy is willing to pay you $250 for you to play C major seventh.
Yeah.
and and have a good attitude and work with him and help him make something. So, I think it's just one of those things where it's your youth, mm-hmm. and your positive attitude, because it's just like cops. And, they say young cops want to change the whole world when they first start and everything, because you're gung-ho. You're like, God, I'm going to play guitar. I'm going to do this, and It's going to be great. But as bills come and, what other things happen in your life, medical, whatever, now all of a sudden you need money, and so you have to walk that line. And I know it's not, and everybody's not the same, which is the other thing, Some people don't work well under pressure of sessions and stuff. I'm not crazy about it, but I'll do it. But I love playing live for sure, mm-hmm. And stuff like that. That's my favorite. But I think it's just a matter of you understanding. Like, if you're going to be a bebop guy, you understand that there may not be a lot of money in it, but you love bebop and you love jazz, and that's why you do it. Mm-hmm. And I think it's really cool. But you got to be smart enough to be the guy that you can't go, well, I'm going to play jazz and nothing else, and I'm going to die by it, because you will.
Yeah. Yeah.
You will. So I would think it would behoove you to play jazz as much as you want at home, and on your off nights, and on your other nights, play the C major seventh.
Right. So, kind of speaking of being a working musician, like what are some of your highlights? Like, if we were watching the Reggie Boy Jr. biopic and there's an opening scene, like what's like one of the craziest, coolest moments that you kind of think back on?
All the ones I think about is this is how creepy I am. All I see are all my failures, because when I look back at them, they're hilarious. Okay. And they changed my life.
So what's the highlight of that?
So let's see. So I would say the first one was in Chicago, and I got fortunate enough. There was a guitar player, he just passed. He used to be Stevie Wonder's sound man, a guy named Danny Leake. Danny Leak was one of the top session guys in Chicago. He liked me. And he would, even though he was going to play guitar, he would get me on sessions and give me his work. Because I was like 18 or 19. And, you know, he saw something in me, I guess, and was willing to work with me. So he called me for this session. And he wasn't there, but I just was going to sub for him. And I got there, and it was all the guys that at Paul Serrano's studio that were the big guys. And I was like, this is going to be great. And I'm young and stupid. And I went, I'm going to kill this. This is going to be fantastic. And we walk in, and we set up, and we go through the track. And I think we played it through, and everything was cool. And the other guys were like, they knew each other, and I kind of just met them. And they were like the main guys, the main session guys. And so they were very relaxed and having a good time. It was like sitting in with the Wrecking Crew, where they just all knew each other, and they're joking around, and you're just kind of like the third wheel, but you're going to prove yourself. And we finish the track, and we go in the control room, and they're playing it back. And everybody's going, yeah, that's cool. And everybody's nodding. And all of a sudden, the engineer or producer goes, I hear something. And he goes, play that back. And he's playing it back. And he goes, just give me the drums. Give him the drums. And the way this was set up, I knew at this point that I was dead.
Oh.
Because I kind of knew what was going on, but I kept my head down and just prayed a lot.
Yeah.
And they go to the drummer, and they're watching the needles, and they've got the click track going. And while the click track's going, the VU meters are perfectly with the click track. And they're going, dude, you always kill it, Steve. Steve Cobb, I remember. And they were like, you kill it. And they're like, yeah, man. And they're all digging him. Then they go, put in the bass. They put in the bass. He's playing. It's killing. It's locked in. And I'm like, okay, this is not looking good.
Just walking the plank.
Yeah. And I'm just like, oh, shit. And then they put it into keyboards. And he goes, okay. And then all of a sudden, he goes, pull that out, put in the guitar.
Oh, and they knew it too. They were just saving you for last to make
exactly.
It. Yeah.
Exactly. You know, because I had walked in, and sometimes you don't have to say anything or be any way, but you just look cocky. And I know I was looking cocky because I figured, because Danny Leak sent me, they were going to leave me alone. And all of a sudden he solos the guitar, and all you hear is, and I went, and the place is quiet. And he just goes, oh, we'll fix it later. Okay, that's cool. We'll fix it. And so we finished that tune, and he was like, that's it. And then when I heard the tune, maybe a couple of weeks later, I wasn't on it.
No.
It was somebody else.
Oh,
in fact, it might have been Danny.
Yeah. So did you know kind of right away, or did your 19-year-old ego kind of tell a difference?
Oh, no. It got squashed immediately.
Okay.
That's why I remember my failures, because I worked so hard at playing guitar that I was devastated. So every time I get one of these learning lessons, I would just get devastated because I would be so embarrassed, because I would think about my family and that my dad would have never done this and my mom would have never done this. And what's wrong with you? And I went home and I just cried and cried. And I was like, oh man, I'm never going to work again. And it took a while. it took a while. It took a good year before I started getting some calls again,
Mm.
and stuff like that. But I totally changed my act. And when I think about the reels, it's like that. Or one time, I was playing with a singer, still younger, and I was more worried about soloing, and I played the rhythm parts and stuff, and it was fine. But then, one day, a drummer was playing, and I was kind of playing, and he just kind of looked at me. He's an older guy, and he just looked at me. And I always had the instinct of I knew what was supposed to be played, but sometimes I try to push the envelope.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem was I wasn't qualified. This is a big problem about a lot of the guitar players nowadays. They try to stretch out, but they're not qualified. Just because you can play one piece good doesn't mean you're qualified to play everything. And one good thing that makes it a great thing I love about John Mayer. John Mayer, I think, is a wonderful player. But the thing that I love most about him is he always gets better because he's constantly trying to learn. Mm-hmm. He sees right away. When you see him on the concerts with Derek Trucks or whoever, as soon as that person plays, you see him look like, shit, I want to do that. Yeah. And it's like, that's what keeps us going.
Right.
You hear, no matter how good you are, you hear another guitar player and you go, I want to do that. Because it's so cool. And so with this drummer, he was looking at me, and when he looked at me, I knew what he was gonna. He didn't say anything. He just kind of looked, and I wasn't in the pocket with him. I was playing the part. It was okay, but it wasn't fun. Then I started to understand. You know what? You want everybody in the band to enjoy playing with you. There's another revelation. It doesn't matter if you think you're doing a good job. You want to be a little more giving, where you want each person to enjoy playing with you, because you make their job easier and you make their job fun. Mm-hmm. And the drummer, after we took a break and we were talking, he was a really nice guy, and he went, I love it when we lock in, because a few times we locked in. And he goes, you don't know what it's like when I have to play with a bunch of people and they're not really listening to me. And it's a lot of work on me to have to try to make everybody get in the pocket. And I'm trying to do that and play indication fills for the artist. And I'm trying to do all these things, but I need everybody to play with me. And some guys just don't. Mm-hmm. And he goes, sometimes we lock in, and it just makes it so easy because I feel like it's me and somebody else working it. Mm-hmm. And it hit me with a light bulb, another moment. And I went, shit, that's it. And so then I started attacking gigs by going, with the drummer, I make sure I'm locking in with it, which made me a better player because all drummers play different. So then I had to actually listen to the drummer. And I started realizing, this is what guys don't do. They don't listen, because you might be playing with a drummer tonight that plays a little bit on top of the beat. But tomorrow you might play with a guy that plays a little behind the beat. But it's up to you to find his pocket and lay in there with it. Mm-hmm. Not try to make everybody play your pocket. So I started doing that with the drummer. And I worked really hard for a couple of years just working at that, at whoever drummer I played with, locking in, till they would all just smile and have a good time. Then I started trying to do it with the bass player. Then I started realizing, this could go even further. And I'm sure this is things you do, because with Cam and stuff, you start to realize, you know how you become valuable as a musician in a band when you're playing with an artist? When you help the artist out.
Amen.
When you play parts that when you see the artist has a problem coming in a spot, so you start playing the same line all the time at that spot. And they may not say anything, but they've latched on to you because they know when they hear you play that, they can do this.
Yeah, man.
And when you start watching everybody and helping everybody out that way that you can and playing it, which brings me to the next rant. Play parts. Play parts. Tunes have parts. When you're playing, when they're in the studio and they're working on it, they've worked on those parts. That wasn't just a happenstance.
Right.
They've worked on those parts. So play those parts. Get inside those parts. You know, if it's one note and it's just one note and, you know, a 2-bar rest. If that's the part, that's the part. So
Yeah.
rather than go, boy, do I want to play that? Let me add these notes and make it spicy. How about going the other way? No, I'm going to play that one note, but I'm going to make that note so solid and so good. And so you start thinking about that with everything you play, trying to make it really good. So when you're in that band, you bring the level of the band up. You know, because
I
it's.
remember you were always telling because you played with that high profile party band, like event band.
Oh yeah.
In LA, and you would play all these celebrity events, and the people that, you know, either recorded the song or played on the song would come up to you and be like,
right.
How did you play my part so well? And that was such a cool thing.
Oh yeah. You know, I remember Wayne Newton. We had to play a thing, and I had to play with Wayne Newton for a couple of songs. And they'd start out with Donkashane. And Donkashane starts out with a ukulele and this guitar, this strummy part. And my mom used to make me watch this amateur hour when Wayne Newton was just a kid. And he would come on every couple of weeks because he was like their darling, and he would sing. Well, now fast forward to like maybe, I don't know, 12 years ago, and I get to play with him. And they pull up the chart and it's Donkashane. And I see the chart and it's just got regular chords, but I remember the song. And I remember because my mom would show it to me. So, or, you know, show me, watch him play it. And so I started to play it. And then he just turned around and went, that's it. That's it. That's how it goes.
Yeah, man.
And you're just like, yeah, you know, and that's the thing, because it's a common practice that people come in and kind of play what they want to play. And sometimes it's one, here's another, not a failure, but it made me learn a lot. And even now, I play with the Staple Singers. And right now there's a commercial on, and they do I'll Take You There. And every so often it's on the TV a lot again. So I always relive it. And I always wish, because I was 20 years old, that when I played with them, I played it, but I wasn't seasoned enough or experienced enough to really hear how cool those Muscle Shoals parts are. And I would have played the show differently.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because at that point, I was playing it like, you know, Poppy and them liked what I did, and they were like okay with it and everything. But when I hear the record, you're like, yeah, I kind of missed the boat there.
So how would you articulate that difference between what you did and what they did on the record?
On the record, there's two parts. There's just like, so you got, and
mm-hmm.
That's pretty much the tune. Now, when I played it, I don't really remember exactly what I did, but it was much busier. It was probably like, because I was listening to more of the band And when I came in, there was like no rehearsal. All of a sudden I auditioned. They said, you got the gig and be at the airport.
Right.
So what I played was just what it was going to be. And when I got there, I think so I pretty much just played C to F, kind of like C, something like that.
Right.
Something like that. And it's like, well, it was kind of groovy and it was okay. But when you hear the tune, that's the part.
Right.
And it just, every time I hear the song now, that just sticks out.
Yeah.
Because when you hear the bass and the drums and how it works with it, that's the space. And then I remember I wrote this little picking thing that Mavis to this day has their players use. And we used to do this feature where she'd break it down and I just, it was something like that. It broke down to that. And she would get next to me and she would sing that and we'd play it. And that was cool. And I thought, wow, that's really great. It's really cool that she liked it and all. But when you get out of it and you're going back to the vamp, you should have gone back to,
yeah,
because you see that that's the reoccurring theme. But when you're younger, you're not thinking that way. So I think a lot of it is just when you watch the guys on YouTube, they just haven't, they're not playing bad. They're doing what everybody else did when you were their age.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that I wasn't crazy enough to put it on YouTube.
Right. Yeah, and you didn't have the luxury of doing it,
no,
25 times and picking the one time you did it right.
Yeah, right. And then going, hey, here it is. Watch me play this.
Yeah.
And the other part is, it's kind of weird, is I go, even if I could play it, I never thought anything I played was all that enough to want to show the world.
Right. Yeah.
It was like, well, what am I playing here that you don't already know?
Yeah.
So it's like, but you see the guys like
consideration anymore.
Yeah. You see the guys now on YouTube and they're like, can you play this lick? No, but I can play a C major 7 and I can make $250. And it's not all about money, but it is about working.
Yeah, yeah.
It is about working, because it comes to a point where there's only two choices. Play something obscure that you really like and keep it pure like that and work a day job. And if you're good with that, perfect. Or not want to work a day job because you've been playing guitar your whole life and you'd like to be a guitar player for a living. And if you are, then you got to play a lot of things that you're not crazy about. But as you get older, there's songs you don't hate anymore, because once you've played it, you realize, hey, that's kind of cool.
Right, and then you just try to play them well.
You just try to play them well.
Yeah.
You just try to play them well. You have guys that look down upon people who play in cover bands. But cover bands is some of the greatest foundation you could ever have.
Yep.
Because it teaches you, number one, a song form. Songs that are, you're in a cover band, so you're playing hits. So you're playing songs that are huge hits. And so you should be able to notice the commonality between the songs as far as forms and what a pop song does and what a hook is. And if you've been playing cover tunes long enough, you become hooky in your playing. Because even when you write something, you naturally write a hook, because that's what because you're playing hit songs.
Yep.
So it's very important, I think, for people to play cover tunes.
Plus, you play for those gigs. You play usually several hours. Where when you go
Right,
with
right,
a songwriter, you play 45 minutes and you're done.
right, right. And you're playing different people's styles, which is great. You know, there's a lot of things that go into, like I said, guitar playing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, one of the worst parts about music was the iPod. Not because it's a bad thing, but because it allowed people to do, and back, I'll say it again, if I was lived in the era of the iPod when I was a kid, I would probably do the same thing. I was a Zeppelin guy. I loved Zeppelin, Cream, and Deep Purple. And if I had had an iPod, I would have never listened to the radio, and I would have just loaded my iPod up with Zeppelin, Deep Purple,
Mm-hmm.
and that would be it. Cream.
Yeah.
And that would be it. And then years later, when I want to play, I would know nothing but Cream, Zeppelin, and Deep Purple.
Right.
And I would put an ad in it saying, I want to start a band, much like Deep Purple, Zeppelin, and Cream. And that's what happened to a lot of music. When people got an iPod, they lost the influence. Like when I was a kid, there was AM radio and there wasn't even FM radio yet. So in an hour, you would hear a Beatles song, a Frank Sinatra song, a Jerry Reed song, Mike Douglas song, Edie Gourmet song, a song from Man of La Mancha, a movie soundtrack, To Sir With Love. And even though all I wanted to hear was the Beatles song, I had to hear all these other songs before I heard the Beatles song. And even though I maybe wasn't digging it, I was hearing it. I was hearing it every day, because you listen to the radio every day.
Yeah.
So even though I thought I was only playing Deep Purple and Cream and stuff, I had all these other chordal sensibilities of real other songwriters, professional songwriters, Burt Bacharach, people like that, Quincy Jones. So I was hearing their voicings, hearing all that stuff.
Right.
So even though I thought I was only listening to one thing, I had tons of influences.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the players in like the 90s and so on, after the iPod, they just listened to what they wanted to listen to. So if you listen to nothing but Tool, and then when you decide to have your own band, it's probably going to sound like Tool.
Right. And that's fun because your gig while I knew you in LA was, 4 hours, and you would, maybe tell a little bit about what those nights were like, because to me that sounded like the quintessential challenge for versatility.
Oh, it was great. Like some of the corporate things. The corporate things were great because we covered 500 charts at least, and we played everything from 1920 stuff all the way to current, to rap, to Snoop, to Jay-Z, to whatever, And so the thing that made it so great, and a lot of it had to do with the band was really good, because the band were really great musicians that appreciated different styles of music. So they would do the same thing I would do. They went home and learned it, So when you'd play it, it was authentic. And it would be nothing better than playing like Sinatra Quincy charts and knowing that you're sounding like that with a big horn section and all.
Yeah.
And you're nailing that. And you're learning things because I remember, because of the musicianship being so good and talking to different guys, you would have guys, like I remember there was a keyboard player, and he was just wonderful with big band stuff. He loved big band stuff, and he did a lot of the charts. So when he would write the guitar chart out, he was great enough to not only just write the chords of the song, but inversions. So as you play through the song, you would play inversions of the first inversions, and inversions of those, and different voicings of those. So by the time you finished the chart, you knew like a ton of different ways to play it with leading tones that made it great because it worked with the horn lines.
Yeah.
And things like that. And so you'd learn that from him. And I'd ask him about it, and he'd go, oh, well, you know, a lot of times you wouldn't play every chord that I wrote, but these are nuances you could play. And so, but because you're playing every night, you know, you're getting this under your belt. You know, you didn't have to go home and practice it. You are playing it every night.
Yeah.
So you're learning. Then all of a sudden, you're in playing 50 stuff. And all of a sudden, you start getting into the Scotty Moore thing and everything. And you're like, wow, this is really cool. And because you're playing it every night. And you're starting to see, and you're starting to feel. And you start to feel what it's like. So then it gets to funky stuff and disco stuff. And you're starting to really realize how wonderful the musicianship is for all these styles, you know, and where their heads were at. And it just makes for a beautiful thing. And you're playing 4 hours and the styles are changing constantly, and you're reading. And after a while, you're not reading because you know them by heart. But now it's even in a more learning environment because you're actually hearing and listening. You're not reading now. So now you're listening, you know. So a lot of times when you're playing a lot of the ballroom stuff, or we play like for a lot of affluent people. And like one time we had to do a party for John Williams. And so they wanted to open the party up with the theme from Superman.
Yeah.
So they sent the charts over from the movie.
Wow.
And now you're reading that. And you're like, you know, like, wow, I never read for like a huge movie. And so you're seeing how they write it for that.
Yeah.
You know, and you're like, you know, and that's pretty cool. And like, I'm not a super great reader, but I can get through it. And, you know, but you learn so much and you get better at it. And everything becomes logical. And then, you know, then you've got things like funky stuff that you already kind of play and rock stuff, which I knew all about that stuff. But you even start to hear that. You start to hear things that are just brilliant, like how important what's Angus's brother?
Malcolm?
Malcolm.
Yeah.
How important Malcolm's parts are to AC/DC.
Yeah.
You know, you start, as you start playing, because you're playing every night, you start to visit things. And then you go home and you listen to the record again. And then you listen to the record and you start to hear things because you're playing every night. So it's not like you play the song once every year. You're playing it every night. And so you start to hone in on parts. And you start to realize every time Angus solos, Malcolm plays a different rhythm part. That is crucial to his solo.
Right.
It's crucial. It's the setup. And, you know, his rhythm changes. You know, listen to what he plays in Back in Black when the solo comes. You know, he's not playing da 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 da. Now he's playing dump da 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 da.
Right.
Da da da, and it just makes it march so he can play. You know, and you're just like, wow, and all the kicks and stuff. So it's pretty cool. And so you do that with all music, with the rap stuff, with everything. And once you get inside a song and see what it's saying, you start to really appreciate it. You know, you just appreciate it. It just makes you a better player. Because most of my rants are all about stop making life hard on yourself. You know, if you're going to be a guitar player, then be a damn guitar player and learn your parts. Learn your stuff. You know, when you sit down, like something you said that was great, you don't try to change everything, but you try to play it well. you try to play it really well.
Yeah. I mean, this is my big pet peeve when I go back to Denmark is there's this prevailing attitude among some musicians where there's real music and then there's what they call butt cheek.
Right.
And that's playing party bands. And you see
Yeah.
these musicians who are getting paid by Denmark because it's Denmark. So they're getting paid to study music for 8+ years, right? And they're up there playing all these classic songs where these brilliant world-class session musicians recorded beautiful parts, and they're just like, oh, I'm just playing butt cheek. And I'm just like dying because I'm like, man, if you don't want to play at this wedding, then play like you're better at playing at a wedding or better than
Right.
playing at a wedding. Don't half-ass it.
Right.
Because you blame the gig because you're too fancy to play a Stevie Wonder song. Like, it drives me
See,
nuts.
that's the other thing. It's like, you know, when you're playing a tune like a Stevie Wonder tune, and the beauty should be that the people like it. It's a great song, and the parts are great, and you know, it's like. But when you start looking down upon stuff, you know, because it's not this or that, or it's not what you want to play, you know, that's the measure of a real guitar player. That you play something you're not crazy about, but you play it well.
Amen.
You know, that's the thing. And then you start to like it. I used to have this thing about what I like about you.
Yeah.
And I used to go, yeah, that's all right. And I didn't look down on it because I knew it was a party tune. And I liked the song. But playing it was like, yeah. But then I was in a band that had to play it. And then I started playing it. Then I started really liking it. Because I started really liking it. Because you started listening to it and going, man. Because this is one thing guitar players don't understand. You can be brilliant in different ways. You don't have to be brilliant with chops to be a really good guitar player. There's one challenge that I still have, I've said my whole life. The best guitar players are not the most famous guitar players. And the most famous guitar players hardly know anything. But what they know better than anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what you need to understand. Albert King probably didn't even know what a pentatonic scale was. All he knew is those 4 notes that he played every night were the notes he played. Now you can go to guitar players with mega chops. But one note from Albert King negates that.
Yep.
Negates all that. Because those 4 notes tell his story. And if you got a story, then you're a great guitar player.
Yeah.
If you convey your story. And people need to understand that. You know, the guy that, you know, Eddie, outstanding guitar player. But not the greatest guitar player ever. Jimmy, not the greatest guitar player ever as far as chops.
Mm-hmm.
But who plays better than them?
Right.
But who plays better than them? You know, what did they know? Not much. Not much. So what's more special? The guy that goes to school for 30 years and knows tons and tons of things? Or a guy that doesn't know much of anything, but everything he plays, people cry because it's so good.
Right. Exactly.
You know, it's like, you know, it's kind of like back to the football analogies. There's some running backs and receivers that a smart coach understands, well, they don't really remember their routes very well. And they don't really do this much. But every time he's on the field, he catches that fucking ball.
Mm-hmm.
Or he gets away. And I don't know how he does it, but he does. So you don't question it. You just give him the ball and let him do what he does. And if he goes, sorry, coach, I forgot the pattern, the route. It's like, don't worry about it.
Right.
Yeah, whatever. You'll figure it out.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's kind of like that. So I think my biggest rant for most of that stuff is be aware of what a great player is. A great player is a person that plays something that moves someone. It doesn't have to be hard to play. It doesn't have to be, I mean, Deep Purple, not getting in the Hall of Fame. You know, a friend of mine said, all I want is Deep Purple to be asked again, and I want Richie Blackmore to walk up and go, I wrote Smoke on the Water, bitch, and just walk away.
Yeah.
And go, if I'm not in the Hall of Fame, who is in the Hall of Fame? I wrote Smoke on the Water. You may say it's easy, you may say it's no big deal, but everybody loves Smoke on the Water.
Yeah. Or your kids, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know, it worked for him. ZZ Top.
Yeah.
You know, it's like stuff like that. It's just good. So I always look, you know, I don't look for chops. I look for clever creativeness.
Yep.
You know, creative.
Simple is hard when you try to do it. It's very hard.
You know, that song I sent you, the Surfing Santinis or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Santini Surfers. It's like that guy. It's like, no, it's not anything hard to play, but it's just beautiful.
It's Jonas Kau is his name.
Yeah. It's just beautiful, man.
Yeah.
It's gorgeous. You know, it's like, I don't know what's better, his playing or his engineering. You know, because those sounds are just outstanding.
Yeah, it's super cool.
Yeah, you know. So you're just like, you know, but I just think a lot of it's just being young. And because you're on YouTube, you know, it's just another thing. But if you can make money and make a career out of it, then go for it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how it works, but
yeah,
maybe some people do. I want to circle back to something, because when you were talking earlier about working with the drummers, it was sort of from the younger years where you were the underdog. But I remember some brilliant bits of wisdom you shared with me about what to do when the drummer isn't on your level. I don't know if you had some really good rants about how to handle that.
I'm trying to remember what I said. I don't remember exactly what I said, but do you remember?
Yeah, basically you were talking about, you know, just looking at the drummer, keeping solid time, and then eventually he realizes that he's leaning on you.
Right.
And then he comes up to you after the show and he's like, how was my time in that song? And you go,
right.
That's when you know you're the man.
Well, yeah, what you do, and this goes for the whole band, what is back to the playing parts. Sometimes when you get in a band and people aren't right where they should be, or they're just playing all over the place, the best thing you can do is you don't say anything. You just play your part, but you play the shit out of your part.
Mm-hmm.
So if your part's going da-dank, dank, jank, jank, da-dank, dank, jank, jank, and everybody's playing all around it, all of a sudden you just kind of get your best tone happening and just go da-da-da, jank, jank, and start really digging in and try to take don't take the tune over, but put the groove where it should be. Now, if it's the drummer, you just keep playing the same over and over, and you look at him, and you keep playing, and it's pretty much kind of what the drummer did to me.
Mm-hmm.
You just look at him, and it might take a second, a few songs, and suddenly they start playing and they start locking in. And then they start realizing after a while, wow, I'm playing better than I usually play.
Yeah.
And then, you know, you can see the look on their face. They're like, wow, this is kind of nice.
Yeah.
This is kind of nice. And you look at him, and then you see the bass player, and he's doing all that, and you look over at him, and you go. And he starts to kind of stare, and all of a sudden, the thumb goes away, and the fingers start to go up, and he starts playing the line, and everything starts to go.
Yeah.
And they all look at you, and you go. And all of a sudden, because you realize that a lot of times it's not the guys can't groove, is that it's what the drummer told me. That's what I was bringing up before, that he's by himself. And after a while, drummers get tired of trying to carry people.
Right.
And then they just start going off on their own and go, well, no one cares, so I don't care. So you can never have that attitude. If no one cares, you got to be the one that cares.
Amen.
No matter what, you got to be the one that cares. You got to be the one that makes sure that the band is always good, because you think you're only one guy. But I spent most of my life being that guy that could pull a band together, without saying anything. Because you just show them, I'm going to play this part, and I'm going to play it and have fun, and I'm going to play as best as I can. And tomorrow's going to be even better, because I'm going to be even better. I'm going to work on it. I'm going to be even better.
Yeah.
And after a while, they're like, yeah, I want to do that too. And the guys used to always come up and go, I used to think about how much I overplayed, and you got in the band, and all of a sudden, it just seemed so apparent. And then that's when it dawned on me. When you keep playing your part, it magnifies a guy overplaying.
Yeah.
Because if everybody's going blah, 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 it just sounds like everybody doing that. But if all of a sudden the drummer and bass player are going blah, 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 and you're going dunk, dunk, check, dunk, dunk, it makes blah, 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 blah sound like nonsense.
Yeah.
And suddenly they realize, oh man. So pretty much I'm just getting back at the world for what they did to me at the studio when they isolated my track and hurt my feelings.
That's great.
But
that's
so
awesome.
I think all of it is just, you got to care. You got to care, and you got to take it seriously. And you've got to not hate all other types of music, even though there might be some music you love. And there's nothing wrong with that. But just remember that being a professional musician is your job. And no one said that no matter what job it is, digging ditches, whatever, brain surgeon, there are things you don't like to do, but they need to be done.
Yeah, and if you ever want to advance out of whichever situation you're unhappy with, you got to be better than that.
You got to be better than that.
Doing it poorly, like that's such a musician thing to kind of half-ass it, because I don't give it.
No. There was a time in my life where I used to get mad at people when they wouldn't play right. And then that's when I started to understand that's the breaking point between real professional musicians and guys that just play gigs. Because there's a difference. Some cover bands are just guys that play day jobs, and on the weekend they play and they have fun. And there again, there's nothing wrong with that. But they can't have an attitude like, oh, I play on the weekend, I'm a professional musician. Well, no, you're not.
Mm-hmm.
Because, and it's not a reason because you're not good enough or it has nothing to do with that. It's just, it comes that line of, are you going to play guitar and that's all you're going to do? Because once you step into that realm, everything's different. Because now it's not about getting a day job. It's about, if you want a car, insurance, a home, and all you want to do is play guitar, you better be on your shit.
Yeah, man.
And there's a million guys that want to do that. And there's the other thing to remember that's really important. When someone hires you, they hire you to do their job. So you can't go to the audition and go, I can play twice as fast as Yngwie, I should have this job. Because to the musical director and the artist, back to this again, he's looking for a guy to play C major 7th. And you can walk in and play Yngwie, who I love Yngwie. You know, I get a kick out of it. I just think it's cool.
More is more.
Yeah, yeah. But dude, you know, it's like I love to sit at home and play around with Yngwie stuff, and it's so cool. But I've yet to use it
Right. Yeah.
for anything.
Yeah.
You know, except just to throw it in for fun.
Yeah.
Because you're showing off.
Right.
And you see some guitar players, you go, I'll throw this in there.
Yeah.
But if you were recording, you would have never put that in there.
No.
You know, and so you have to understand that when that guy hires you, pay attention to what job you're doing. You know, what job are you doing? And realize what they need.
Yeah.
Because a person picks what they need. You know, but when you're younger, you think you're auditioning so they can find the best player there is.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the case.
No.
That's not the case at all. You know?
Actually, not when you think of how much time you spend together that isn't playing music.
Right, right. So they want to know, you know, they want to make sure, can I get along with you on a tour bus?
Exactly.
You know, are you going to drive me nuts? You know, how are you on stage? Are you supportive? Are you a curmudgeon? You know, all those things. Those mean more than playing.
Yeah.
Those mean more than playing because, I mean, you look at like, you know, a Whitney Houston gig. It's not really a hard guitar gig. You know, so the need for a super guitarist isn't, you know, you don't need that.
Right.
You know, you don't need that. It's like, but then you see a guy like, I'll tell you who did a great job, Greg Howe playing the Justin Timberlake gig.
Mm.
You know, you would have never known when you see Greg play the gig. He's just playing the shit out of the gig. Playing all the parts, it's funky, it's good, it's great. And then all of a sudden they let him have a little solo here and he turns into Greg Howe. And you're just like, yow, man. And then he's right back to where he was again.
Right.
And it's like, you know, or Nuno with Rihanna. Another great, you know, great guitar player. You know, but you wouldn't, you know, but he plays his parts. And what he's playing is great. But you'd had no idea the other things he can play. Because that's not what he was hired for.
Right.
You know?
And that's why he's there. Because he gets there.
Yeah. And I love to see things like that. Because that means you grew up.
Right.
You grew up, you know? And it doesn't mean everybody has to grow up. You just have to understand that if it doesn't work out the way you think it is, it might be because of your bad decisions.
Amen.
It's because of your bad decisions.
Yeah.
You know, guys that go, I know guys that say, I won't play a cover gig. You know, they go, I just won't play a cover gig. I only play originals. Well, I'm good with that. I understand.
Mm-hmm.
But don't walk around going, damn it, there's no place to play my originals and my rent is due.
Right. But I also never understood because you could, if you just make that comparison, right, that you could be comparing an incredible, cover band with a shitty original gig. Like there are plenty of bad singer-songwriters to play with. So you can walk around and be proud that you don't play cover music, but maybe you play with artists that aren't good. So then what's better? Is that playing with a killer orchestra that goes out and plays cool events and you play like what you were talking about earlier?
Yeah.
Or playing at, one coffee shop after another and you get to walk around and be proud of that?
Yeah, it's like there's, I don't know if you know who Jay Sukalo is.
I don't think so.
Jay Sukalo is Trump's lawyer. And you got to check this out. Jay is like, I'm sure he's super, super rich, and all that. Well, he has a band, and you can just look on YouTube, Jay Sukalo Band.
Wow.
But here's the thing that's crazy. They do tons of classic rock, and the people he must have just spent his money and just paying these guys. Like he's got, I think it's John Elefante singing from Kansas, and he's got all these guys, and he paid them. I don't know if they're Trump supporters. I don't know anything about them, but they're musicians, and I'm sure he paid them. He must have paid them a lot of money. Yeah. Because these guys are playing Boston and everything as good or better than Boston. You look on YouTube and every one of their things sounds as good or better than the record. And Jay just kind of strums acoustic guitar, or he sits at the drums a little bit. And he just wanted to, he's got the best band money can buy.
Man, yeah.
And they're really, really good. And it's like, regardless what your political affiliation is good, and they're killing. But
it's a good way to spend your money if you have hire killer musicians to play with. Like who wouldn't do that?
Yeah. So what do you do? Like you said, do you play originals only and be in a band that plays that nobody really cares about? Or do you play in that band where you're playing Boston better than Boston?
Right. Or you're even playing with Boston.
Playing with Boston.
Have you ever seen The Rain with Fogerty?
It's like what I said about, even if I got the gig with Michael Jackson, I'm still playing in a cover band.
Mm-hmm. I remember you turned
Right Thriller.
Right.
I'm in the Michael Jackson cover band.
Yeah, for sure.
With Michael Jackson, that's all.
Yeah.
So, it's still a cover to me. If I play I'll Take You There with you, or I play it with Mavis, it's the same.
That's right.
So I just think that, when guys are thinking about guitar as a career, you just need to be realistic, not knocking anybody for what they want to do, but don't bitch about it later if it's not what you wanted because you made a bad decision. Because you refuse to play other people's music. Mm-hmm. Now you have to, you're like, I hate working at 7-Eleven or a Guitar Center, but I want my original band. Well, that's just the way it's going to be. Just look at it for what it is. I want to be an original band. I want to only play music I write. I know there's not a lot of call for it, but there are places I can play, and I'm just going to get better at it and hopefully get a hit or get something happening. And in the meantime, to fund that, I'm going to work at 7-Eleven or Guitar Center so I can do what I want to do. Mm-hmm. And if it doesn't work out, at least I tried. That's the attitude.
Right.
Not the holier than thou thing, but I've thought about this. I realized the ups and downs, and I decided to go that route.
Right.
I want to play bebop. I know the best place to play it is New York. I'm going to New York. I know there's a million guys that play bebop great there. I'm going to work a day job and go to those clubs and those jams, and hopefully somebody will pick me up or like me and blah, 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 blah. Plan.
Right.
Perfect. Plan.
Yeah.
Don't do that and then go, this world sucks.
Yeah, exactly. Don't blame.
I got to work at Guitar Center. And you don't have to.
Yeah.
You can play what I like about you. but you don't want to.
Right.
There were times I remember getting stranded where a band broke up, and I worked for 6 months at a pizza place playing Dixieland, just so I'd have money, so I could get enough money to rent a car to go to Florida where there was another band that it looked like I could join their band. And it was like, they were like, yeah, the guitar player's leaving in like 4 months or something. And I've known the guys, and they went, could you do the gig? And I went, yeah, but I'm going to need to get some money up. So I played guitar doing Dixieland. Now, I could have got a day job, but I want to be a guitar player. Do I want to play Dixieland all night at a pizza place? No, but the pizza was great. And now I know a bunch of polkas.
Yeah, right.
And it was fine. And it was fun. And no, there were never any solos ever. And there was never anything. And all I did is play guitar like banjo.
Right.
Strumming it like banjo.
Yeah.
But I learned a new style.
Yeah.
And learned a bunch of polka tunes. And and it paid me.
Yeah.
You know, it paid me. It was like, it wasn't a lot of money, I remember, but it was like, you know, I didn't have anything. I think it was paid like $150 and all the pizza you could eat.
Yeah.
And that was like killer.
Yeah.
And it was 6 nights a week. And it was like, okay.
Yeah.
You know, in a few months I saved up, still was able to pay rent. Wasn't rich, but had enough to rent a car, and it got me to the next step.
Yeah, man.
You know, so it's all about making bad decisions.
So,
you know,
speaking of that, there's one decision you made that I remember, because when we first met, I was fresh off the boat from Denmark and studying at MI, and I knew nothing, and you were just oracle to me. You still are. But at one point, you were like, Stevie Wonder called and wanted me to play, but I'm not going to do that. And my 22-year-old head just exploded. And then you explained it to me, you know, that he plays 2 or 3 shows a year, and you want to play those, you want to learn his whole catalog, you want to play it better than anybody else had ever played it. And it was sort of making sense to me, but not really. And then the older I've gotten, the more it makes sense to me.
Oh.
I just remember not understanding that, you know, in the moment.
I remember I was playing with Jerry Brown. Plays with Stanley Clarke, Diana Ross, with Stevie. And Jerry was nice enough to get me tell the musical director from Stevie Wonder called me. And he said, would you be interested in coming down? And I said, well, what do you got going on? And as I remember, he said, this was like maybe July. And he said, well, we've got a gig in November in South Africa, I believe. And we have another gig somewhere else. And it ended up to be like maybe 3 gigs. And I went, I really can't do it. And I told him, and, you know, he was kind of quiet. He's like, well, your turn. You know, and I was like, well, I go, it's because I'm working all the time here in town, and I can't afford to play 3 gigs. Now, it's great to be able to say I played with Stevie, but there again, how am I supposed to live?
Right.
Now, what the other guys did is a lot of the other guys did the Diana Ross show. And so they would work with Diana when they weren't with Stevie and stuff like that. But, you know, I didn't have that opportunity because, you know, that wasn't offered to me. And then comes the other part of me where I had to be kind of honest with myself and go, there's part of Stevie Wonder's catalog that I just love. And there's another part of Stevie's catalog that just, you know, like Secret Life of Plants and stuff like that. It's okay. You know, it's fine for me. But I got more fun out of playing my other gig where I played a little bit of everything. And if I was going to play the Stevie gig, I would, you know, and this happens because as artists get older, you know, they get, you know, Stevie's older. So he's just not going to tour like he did when he was 20.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
You know, so, you know, but I want the Stevie Wonder that was from 1970 something, where he was ready to kick ass and take names every show.
Yeah.
You know, like we're starting out with Superstition and we're just going to keep going.
Yeah.
and now it's not like that. And so, you know, I was like, it's not something I really want to do. So I had to ask myself that, do do you really want to do it? And I just told him, I said, I really don't want to do it.
Yeah.
I said, and my friend, I think Morris O'Connor, another guy from Chicago, he's playing with Earth, Wind and Fire now. He had just left the gig. And it's just one of those things where you get to a point where you have to think about money, because there again, I was playing in town, working a lot and making really, really good money. And then crazy money for in town, but it was making good money. And now a guy calls that's famous and goes, I got 3 gigs. And yeah, they're prestigious gigs and they're great.
Yeah.
What do I do the other time? Now another guy would say, well, why didn't you just sub out your gig and just play those 3 gigs? Because I don't really feel like learning the whole catalog for 3 gigs.
Yeah. And you got that with those legacy artists, you know.
Yeah. Because that's the other thing you have to do. When you're playing with legacy artists, you got a big catalog. Because he's going to play what he wants to play.
Yep.
And it's just all those things where it just wasn't the right time for me. And I have to say the other thing was, just to be asked to me was just as good as having a gig.
Heck yeah.
You know, I've turned down a bunch of gigs where it was just cool to be asked. You know, but I always looked out for, you know, because when you're working in town and you're working a lot of times if you have to leave and you come back, somebody else got your gig.
Yeah, and people forget about you in like
people forget about you.
It's incredible.
And I had achieved, you know, at one point, like I was doing the Roseanne show, MD and the TV show and stuff, plus working gigs. So it was like, you know, and being in LA, still the greatest gig to have is a TV gig.
Mm-hmm.
You know, TV gig is just, you know, because you're making really good money and it's over by like 6 o'clock.
Yep.
And you got all night to play anywhere you want.
And then you get paid every time it re-airs.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
It's just, yeah, you know, like with Roseanne was great because I got paid twice. I get paid for being the MD. Then I got paid again because Roseanne would talk to me and go, how you doing? And I go, I'm doing great. And once you talk, you're now an actor.
Right. Yeah. Awesome.
Paid again as an actor. You know, so it's pretty cool. But yeah, so I mean, all those gigs that you see and you get TV gigs like the Kimmel Show and everything, those are great gigs.
Yeah.
Those are great gigs. And, you know, and so, you know, that's what you're looking for. So your priorities change. And then as you get older again, your priorities change again because at this point you have families and stuff. So now you're trying to be a normal family guy, but a guitar player. So it gets even harder.
Right.
Because now you have to do all your daily guitar and musician responsibilities, which are all over the map because of your, you know, being a musician, your time, it could be 10 in the morning or 2 in the morning and you're working. But then you still have a family that you have to take care of and be there for. So all of a sudden, the travel thing starts to go out the window. You can't travel as much as you wanted to, you know, because you need to be by the family, you know, to keep them happy and everything, but you need to be able to work, you know, so you can't afford to give up something just to travel, you know.
Right.
And so your priorities change and you want to do everything. You want to play guitar, but you have to kind of build it around your family, you know, and stuff like that. So it's an interesting life, you know, but it starts out when you're making those decisions, you know, and it's just a matter of just know what you're doing.
Right.
You know,
And then
No
ask
one's
yourself,
doing
is that your final answer?
exactly. Is that your final answer? You know, hey, what would you play here? I play this. That's your final answer? No, I just want to know is
Yeah.
after hearing the tune, is that what you hear over it?
Yeah.
You know, and then comes the other thing of your temperament. You know, you got to understand that, when you see the guys like Tim Pierce and those guys, if you notice their demeanor, like a Larry Carlton or those guys, their demeanor. And you have to learn to be thick-skinned like that. Where, Tim's a wonderful player, but I'm sure there's been a million times where he's played something and he thought it was really good. And they went, nah, let's try this.
Right.
And you got to be able to go, no problem. No problem. But you can see some of these guys and they're like, are you kidding? Did you see what I just played? And it's
right.
Like, it doesn't matter.
Yep.
It doesn't matter. It's like if the guy didn't like it, he didn't like it.
Exactly.
And you have to, look at the guys with Steely Dan. They had to wait for the album to come out just to see if they made the cut.
Exactly.
You had to wait to hear it on the radio to see if it's still you. When I left, it was me.
Oh, that's brutal.
But that's another great story. I remember when I was in Indianapolis, I used to sit and play and jam around with John Harrington and from Steely Dan. And this was like in the 80s. And we'd sit and play Steely Dan tunes. And all he wanted to do is be in Steely Dan. And then, like 15 years ago, I was looking at a thing and I looked and there he was. And I'm like, dude.
Awesome.
It's great. It's so cool because he's a really cool guy and everything. But it's just like, that's the thing. He made his decision. He decided, and he worked hard and he got the gig that he wanted.
Yeah, man.
And so you can do it. Everybody can do it. But you got to understand that being a guitar player is serious and it does impact your life. And you have to set it up early. You got to set up your life early because anything that could derail it could just ruin it.
Right.
You have to make sure you don't have a million kids, all that kind of stuff, because you're going to be traveling. You need to be able to pick up at a moment's notice because gigs are far and few between. And now with COVID and stuff, it's even worse.
Yeah.
It's even worse. So you have to, keep your wits about you. But, my main rant is just don't think you're all that. You're not all that, no matter who you are. You're not all that. And all you want to do is move the listener. If what you can play moves the listener, like I said, you can go through all the famous guys that play guitar. And they're not close to being the best guitar players ever. But what they play when they play it sounds like the greatest guitar player ever.
Yeah. Yeah.
People go, yeah, Jimmy Page is kind of sloppy. You think? But play Black Dog.
Yeah.
What else do you say?
Right.
Play his catalog of songs and his solos. The guitar break on Whole Lot of Love.
Yeah.
Is it the hardest thing to play? No, but is it the coolest thing? Yes. Yeah.
And there's also the art of being, like how Neil Young says, making all your mistakes in the right places.
Right.
It's like it's not just being sloppy. It's being loose, and the opposite is being super clean and sterile,
right.
And boring.
Right. Which brings me to my next rant. I'm glad you mentioned that. Here's my big one to bitch about. You can't over refine things. Guitar players nowadays over refine things. And the more you strain it and you put it through a strainer, the more you're losing valuable tidbits of what made it magical in the first place. That means some things are magic and need to be just left alone. How did Jimmy play that? Who knows? Who gives a shit? All I know is it's the coolest fucking thing I ever heard. Just sit back and listen to it and leave it alone.
Yeah.
If you see these guys, oh, well, he's just playing Mixolydian. Who gives a shit? All I know is a man standing up there with his head full of LSD, playing guitar and singing, and these things are happening that you cannot believe.
Yeah.
And you don't know how it's happening. And that goes for all these guitar players. It's like, stop trying to figure out, it's not a trick. You know, it's not like a guy used to go, Reggie, teach me jazz. And I go, what do you want me to show you? Show me the jazz scale. I go, there's no jazz scale. Come on, man, show me the jazz scale. Come on, brother. Come on, let the rabbit out of the hat. And I go, dude, practice. I go, listen to a lot of jazz and I'll help you. But it's not, you know, he thought, well, I can play blues by playing a pentatonic scale. So just show me the jazz scale.
Yeah, and then we're done.
And we're done.
Yeah.
Like, no, it doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's that kind of thing where, so, and then you get guys that they try to take things apart. Whatever, you know, they try to take you see on YouTube, people trying to explain how Eddie played. You don't know how Eddie played. No one knows how Eddie played. He picked up the guitar and his fingers started doing this and wonderful things came out. Stop right there and just enjoy it. Enjoy it. If you want to learn how he did it, use your ears. Yngwie says something that's really, really cool in one of his things where he's explaining, he's trying to show you how he's playing. And he's trying to explain to people, and I don't know if they got it. He can't show you exactly what he does to sound like that. Because he started out with the sound first. And he just did anything he could to make it sound like he heard in his head. So he kind of hybrid picks when he goes up. And then he alternate picks when he goes down. For no apparent reason, and he doesn't know why, except that worked for him.
Yeah.
He's explaining to you, don't worry about how I play. Just listen to how I play and make it happen. When I used to listen to Cream tunes when I was younger and stuff, I couldn't afford, or they didn't have videos and stuff like that. So you just hear the record. And you just had to use your ears and figure out how he's playing it like that. And that's how you learned inflections and things like that. And what guys do nowadays is they slow it down and they write it out and they slow it down and they refine it and they think. If I take Jimmy Page's solo, but I take the sloppiness all out and play it perfectly like he really wanted to play it, I'm better than him. And it's like, no, because now you're playing the notes correctly and you took all the magic out of it.
Yep.
All the magic's gone. So when I hear somebody play perfectly, I admire that because I know how much work it took. But is it magical? Probably not. Mm-hmm. You know, there's a Eddie Kramer thing about Jimmy playing Hey Joe. And they asked him about the solo. And he went, yeah, he goes, that was a really good solo. He goes, but that was like his fourth or fifth take. You should have heard the first four.
Yeah.
Because he said one got lost, one Jimmy wasn't crazy about, another one, they had some hum. And he said, they weren't going, oh my God, we lost the solo. They just went, hey Jimmy, I got hum on that. Could you do another one? Sure. And you're like, okay. And every time he do one, you're just like, holy shit, another one,
Yeah.
you know? And you're like, man, you know, so, but then there's a guy who will try to find all the solos and try to find the commonality between them and try to figure out what the Jimi Hendrix scale is.
Right.
And it's like, no, it's not.
Yeah.
It's not. You know, Leslie West playing Mississippi Queen is just magic. You know, and you can tell because when he plays it on the record, when he plays it live, it's great. But that take on the record is killing.
Yeah.
From the first vibrato, you're just like, yow.
Yep.
That's a big fat guy with a little guitar beating the shit out of it.
Yeah.
And you're like, wow. But yeah, so I think, you know, it's got to be a spot where I understand, and I guess it's because a lot of people are IT people now, so they try to look at it as science.
Yeah.
You know, and so they're trying to figure out algorithms and things to make it work, but it's art. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
You know, Neil Young. Some of the coolest solos are Neil Young's.
Absolutely.
You know, it's like, dude, you can't pay for that.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, dude, people are like, don't you think he's terrible? I go, no, he's killing.
He's the best.
Killing.
Yeah, and you can't recreate it. Like nobody can ever do that. He's, you know,
no.
So unique.
Yeah, it's so unique. It's like you hear him play, he sings, and like
we're just skipping a little bit, I think. It'll come back. All right.